Shelest, and I'm Chief Editor of UR Ukraine Analytica and also Director for Security Programs at the Foreign Policy Council Ukrainian Prism. I have more than 15 years of practical experience working at different think tanks in Ukraine and abroad, writing policy papers for different governmental institutions from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to the Parliament and military. And today, in the next 25 minutes, I'll try my best to explain what it means to write analytics, what is the difference between the academic writing and analytical writing, what your target audience expect. Let's start from this. First question that definitely we have, what are the main differences between academic writing and analytical writing? What is easier, what is more difficult for whom we are writing? Definitely, question number one, what differ these two types of writing is not just the grammar style or the shortness of the sentences, but that is for whom we are writing and what topics we're choosing. When you write the academic paper, usually you are trying definitely to choose something interesting, something topical, but at the same time, there is something more long-term that will be interesting to read even in 3-5 years, maybe 10 years. And predominantly, let's be honest, we are writing for ourselves and for few peers as us, our colleagues, those who really understand in the topic, or for the students that probably you will have. But when you're writing analytical papers, the target audience is much more defined. Very often you have the real, not just a target audience, but let's say the client, that institution or that politician, that organization that is the owner of the final text. So you understand exactly for whom you're writing. The second particularity that definitely in this case, you choose what is the most topical right now, what is interesting today, maximum tomorrow. Even if you're choosing the topic that you're writing not for the governmental or intergovernmental organization, but you understand that this topic is extremely important now and all your colleagues need to raise awareness about this. We need to understand what it is about and what should we do as expert community or the political community in your country or abroad. But still, you understand that these colleagues are the very audience to which you refer and you call to the certain actions. The second difference between analytical and academic. With academic papers, you not only have sufficient amount of pages where you can go to the theory of the problem, to the history of the issue, but also just to make a general conclusions. When you write a policy paper or policy brief, that is a little bit more difficult because, yeah, the size can be different. It can be 100 pages, it can be 3 pages, and we will go with this further. But in the end, you cannot afford, you cannot allow yourself to have just simple conclusions. You usually have the recommendations, and that's why you need very clear identification who is your target audience. But at the same time, or you can make scenarios or something to give your audience, to give your readers an options for actions, because it's not enough just to understand what is happening. Usually your reader would like to know, okay, what is next, why it was important, what actions I need to take. The next, and that is quite an interesting, people sometimes asking, should I be academic in the past to write good analytical papers? Should I have a PhD, for example, on the subject? It is yes and no. The question is not in your academic title. Your PhD can help you with a good analysis, but at the same time, that is your whole background. That is all your knowledges that you received while, for example, writing your PhD or the academic stuff in the past to write the shortest sentences. Because usually when you're writing analytical papers, definitely you still make footnotes and references, but your sentences are short, your pages are short, and each sentence should have, if you make any type of the judgments, these judgments are based on the years of your experience. And your reader usually, when reading your policy brief, look into one of the conclusions. They understand exactly that these conclusions is not out of the blue, but they are based at your vast knowledge in the topic. Then the size is also one of the huge issues that we have between academic and analytical writing. Usually for the academic articles, you have the standards of the journal where you apply with this article. And let's be precise, it's usually something between the 10 and 20 pages of your article that you have for the academic journal. When we write analytical papers, it is a little bit different. First, we have different types of the analytical papers, and let's go by them. What are the main differences? First, it is the strategic assessment or policy assessment. They can be of any type of the size, and we are preparing them when we are preparing the big documents like strategies or concept or doctrines, when first we need to understand what we already have and how to go further with these. Two most common documents, it is policy paper and policy brief. Policy brief, from the name itself, you can understand that it is brief, usually 3, maximum 5 pages of the very narrow topic when you are trying to answer only one question or to refer only to the one problem, one issue. Policy paper can be from 5 till 30 pages, and it can comprise of several questions or from several dimensions of the same problem. Sometimes the different parts of this paper can have the same structure as what we have with the policy brief, like a composition of several briefs, or we are just trying to emphasize, for example, policy brief on the topic, the new coalition in the French parliament. What should be the actions of the Ukrainian parliament? It's very brief. We analyze the one elections, one coalition, and one country lessons from these or possible actions. Or it can be a policy paper, 2022 elections in Europe, the rise of populism. And in this case, you can take it, for example, either by problematic, you can see why it is the rise of the populism, what are the shared particularities, what are the shared problems or shared issues, what is the common, what are the differences, and then how to minimize the consequences, for example, for the European policy, European integration, European Commission, depending on your target audience. Or you can go country by country and to see that is the situation in France, that is the situation in the United Kingdom, that is the situation in Hungary, that is the situation in Moldova, what to do and how we need to act with these. The topics can be different, but they are definitely something what is right now. And then in the end, we usually come with a certain conclusions, scenarios, or recommendations. The language. The language is always extremely important for us. First of all, when we write academic articles, we can use specific terminology. We can use long sentences. We can use a lot of the historical backgrounds. When we write the analytical papers, the language is different. It's usually short sentences, very precise and clear wording. We use historical background only in case it is important for the current events. We are not going 300 years back in the history of the British parliamentarism if we are describing the current crisis. But at the same time, if we understand that the root of the problem is in 300 years history, we need to name it to make it more understandable. Then it is almost neglectance of the words for entering the sentences. However, nevertheless, when you read your sentence in analytical paper, think, can I avoid this word? What if I delete this word? How can it change my text? And if the text is not losing anything without these words, just delete them. Sometimes to write 3 pages of policy brief, you spend the same amount of time as what you're spending for the big academic article. Because you're checking each number, you're checking each sentence, you're trying to put in one short sentence the whole meaning of the problem, the whole idea behind that issue that you are trying to describe. But also, when we are talking about language, we need to consider two issues. First, don't think that your audience know nothing about it, because usually policy papers or policy briefs you're writing for the knowledgeable audience. Maybe they're not specialists like you. Let's take a member of parliament for whom you're writing about bilateral relations, how to improve them with a certain country. You can think, okay, he or she is not specialist on Japan, but they're in the group of friendship of Japan. Let me explain them everything. That would be a mistake. Maybe these people don't know your exact knowledge, but at the same time, they're working practically with this topic. So they know the issue and they know why they're asking you these questions. So lessons number one, please don't think that your audience is lacking knowledge. But at the same time, don't think that they know everything. Because here as well, that can be a problem, that you're using too much abbreviations or too much of the professional slang that can be just good for you, for your peers, for your colleagues, but they will not be the same good for the audience that you are writing. And here, if you use abbreviations, first time, always make the full name and then use it during the text, and that will be okay. Let's now go to the structure. The simplest structure is always that we have introduction, and in this introduction we're putting why this is important. So you're really trying to explain why you're writing about this topic, why your reader should understand that right now he or she should consider this topic as important. Then you're having the main part. And the main part is definitely will be description of the problem. What is happening, why, maybe that historical background if you consider this important. Or if you're writing about, let's say, parliamentary elections, give the possible variants how these new coalitions could look like or something around this. Then it's up to you to decide what can be the next part. For example, if we're still with the policy brief about elections, we then can go and analyze party by party, what are their position about your country, what they've been talking about your country. So that is still a certain background that will allow us to make conclusions in the end. And then the next part. It is either, as we talked in the beginning, recommendations, exactly what we should do, or it is scenarios. Okay, as for now, we don't know what will be the coalition type. So you can write, if it is the coalition of A and B, we will have that type of the policy about our country. If it is the coalition of B and C, that will be the different type of the priorities regarding of our country, and we need to consider these actions. But if you write recommendations, what you talk about there? First of all, you always should return back to the original question. What is your target audience? Because you cannot advise in general. We need to improve bilateral relations. Perfect. Your audience know about this. That's why they requested you to write this policy brief. But how can we do it? So usually when you go to the recommendations, try to think who is your target audience and is it within their responsibility? Because even if we're speaking about bilateral relations, recommendations that you can give to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs will be different from those recommendations you're doing for the Parliament. Surely you can say that we need to look at ABC. Like, for example, you're advising the Parliament and you're saying that most of the problems are not within the responsibility of the Parliament, but you need to discuss with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that it would be good to have the negotiations about the new agreement on tax, for example, something like avoiding double taxation. So you then will advise to the Parliament that it should be as quickly as possible ratified, but it is up to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to initiate such negotiations with the country. But at the same time, if it is recommendation just for the Parliament, you always can say that the parliamentary group of friendship with this country should meet, or we should invite the members of the newly elected parliament of the country Z to come to us and for the visit, so we can discuss what are the loops in the bilateral relations, or how we can advance the parliamentary diplomacy between our countries. So clearly understand who is the target audience and what can we do, what they can do really to improve the situation about which you are writing. What else we always need to consider when we are talking about the issue? Definitely that it can be different styles, and here if the structure is usually more or less the same, but when we are speaking about the style of writing, that can really consider on your organization. For example, if we go to the Chatham House style, the British institution that is very well known with their papers, they're usually writing in more classical type with the appropriate wording of the neutral wording when it is necessary. But if you go to the European Council of Foreign Relations, another very famous think tank, their style is much more provocative and more plain language that they prefer, less terminology maybe. So they consider that their audience is wider and they would like to reach somebody who is reading good newspapers but would like to know more. Definitely, a lot of politicians are reading what they're writing as well, but they consider that their style is more provocative and more plain compared to, for example, Chatham House. Other think tanks usually have their own style as well, what they prefer. And here is definitely the question, yet one that we can raise. Can the policy paper or policy brief be provocative? Because the language as well will be provocative. It can come either from the headline or from the conclusions, and that is probably up to you. It should be a balance, it should be a certain measure in it, understanding who is reading you, but at the same time, you need to understand what is the topic and do you really need to be provocative with this topic? Because sometimes we are writing policy paper without the exact target or let's say client, but just understanding that now it is the topic that we really need to discuss. We need to attract attention to the potential challenges, potential threats that you see. You see the certain development that should be discussed among the colleagues. And in this case, probably you would like to use a little bit more provocative language because you're calling them for a discussion. You're calling your peers to pay more attention to the topic and to reflect on what you are writing. What else definitely we can think about? And that is quite a funny question, like what can inspire us except of the deadlines? And that is quite a difficult issue for sure, but at the same time we understand that deadlines are very important for any type of the policy papers. Policy papers are actual and important only when the timing for them are good, because sometimes we are publishing, for example, issue just in the middle of the political crisis, and we would like to attract attention to the extremely important topic, but it's just not the very time when we need to discuss it, because nobody will pay attention. Everybody is busy with different issues. So when you decide the topic for yourself, you always can or should clearly consider, will these be important and interesting right now for your target audience? Otherwise, it will not be accepted in a good manner, and you will just lose the efforts that you are trying to apply over there. And then the last but not the least that we definitely should speak about, and that is the issues like resources, what to use, and what to do with, like how many references you should take. When we speak about the academic papers, over there, resources, references, footnotes are extremely important. We always remember the rules about avoiding plagiarism. But when you speak about the analytical papers, your attention to resources is a little bit different. Definitely, we are still fully aware about plagiarism issue that's undiscussable over here. But at the same time, your target audience would like to have your thoughts. You have more right for expression, for judgments, for perceptions within the policy paper, rather than what sometimes you have within the academic writing. It's not obvious that you should refer to two opinions on the issue. Definitely, sometimes if you don't have the final and you would like to propose to your target audience that there are one group that can think like this, that is another group that thinks like this, and we need to understand that there are two views and two possible scenarios for development, that's okay if the topic is up to this. But if you have the very clear view about the issue, that's okay if you use just your opinion, you're taking one side and you make the whole line within this. So in this case, you refer only to those that you consider important. Can it be considered as biased? Yes, it can. But at the same time, when the client, when your target audience is ordering to you, they understand what are your biased, what are your positions, so they are ready for this. And also, we should be very careful with numbers. As soon as we use any type of the numbers or the statements, that's where we need to have a very clear reference. So in this case, those who are reading, they always can refer to this data. Because, for example, you cannot put 25 tables or graphics to your policy brief, but you always can make either reference saying, please see the 10 years trade turnover by this link. And if they consider that is important, they always know where to go. Or it can be appendix. Always think if you can move something to appendixes for those who would like to consider it in a wider context. So, as the conclusion, what we are talking about. It is difficult to write analytical papers and analytical briefs because you need to have vast knowledge and readiness for the precise, short style of writing that is very clear to your target audience. You need to understand who is your target audience, what type of recommendations you can give them, what they really want, what are their needs, and what you can propose to this discourse. The smaller size is more difficult to write than the bigger size because you should be precise. You cannot go in the long explanations. You can be biased in the policy papers, but at the same time, you should be very well argumented. And then it is up to you what methodology to use. Would you like to have just recommendations? Would you like to have scenarios? Would you like to have prognosis? Would you like to have any other type of the conclusions? It's up to you and up to topic. But always be careful with the language. And we hope that in the next videos, you also will be very attentively listening to our speakers who describes you why language matters.